one of those moments where you made me jot down and give me chills. And I was watching you speak, and it was just to a conference room, and you're talking about hell on a hill. And you're talking about just what your friend said to you. And I would love for you to tell that story here, because I'm telling you, man, when you told me that story via YouTube, I was like, oh my God, I just got chills. So I'd love for you to tell it here.
I'll be happy to. Well, it's funny. This is actually Hell on the Hill came one week after the event where I met Frank Shamrock.
Wow.
So a gentleman named Jesse Itzler, who is a remarkable speaker, a remarkable author, a serial entrepreneur. I mean, he started numerous seven-figure companies, just a brilliant guy. And he is an endurance super freak. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's run 100 miles before. And Jesse's always been someone that I've really respected and admired, not just for what he's achieved, but for who he is. I mean, he's a very present father. He's a wonderful husband. He's a brilliant businessman. He's a real out of the box thinker, just a remarkable guy. And he is someone that I had really looked up to from afar for a couple of years, and we had never met. And long story much shorter, Jesse invited me up to his home in New Fairfield, Connecticut, to speak at this retreat, the one where I met Frank Shamrock. And as one of the speakers, again, I thought everything that I thought about Jesse was heightened after that experience. As cool as he was even cooler when it was done. As smart as he was even smarter when it was done. It was amazing. And he said at the end of it, Alan, I have this event called Hell on the Hill coming up next week. Why don't you come back to it? So with very little time to train or very little preparation, I came back up to Connecticut the following week. And for this event, Jesse invites 70 of his friends to run this endurance event. And to paint the picture, his home in New Fairfield, Connecticut's absolutely breathtaking. It backs up to a beautiful lake, but the backyard is incredibly unique because the backyard is 85 yards long. So almost the length of a professional football field. And it's at a 40-degree slope, which is incredibly steep. Most conventional treadmills at a gym only go up to 15%. And if you've put one of those up to 15% to even go for a walk, you feel like you're going to fall off the back of the earth. 15% is really steep. Well, we're talking about 40%. So the challenge for the 70 of us that day, back in the summer of 2017, were to go up and down this hill that's 85 yards long and 40 degrees slope 100 times. And he very appropriately called this event Hell on the Hill. And that it certainly was. As we've uncovered during this discussion, I was a former college basketball player. I've always been into health and fitness. I've always been in pretty good shape, for my age. But at the time, this was definitely the toughest undertaking I'd ever attempted. And I had already run a marathon at that point, but this was a whole new beast. When I got to about rep 70 of going up and down this hill, I was done. I was mentally fried. I was checked out. I was ready to quit. I could feel blisters forming under my big toes. I had throbbing in my knees and my back, and my legs were chafed. And I just figured, man, there's no way I can do 30 more of these, and started to psych myself out with some negative self-talk. And there just happened to be one of my friends was running as well. And his name's Steve Wojciechowski. For anyone that follows basketball, especially if you like Duke basketball like I do, Steve Wojciechowski is a Duke icon, an absolute legend and a god in Durham. And he's also the current head coach at Marquette. And I knew that Steve and I were on about the same number. Like we were going at about the same pace. So when I was just about ready to quit, figuring I had 30 left, I asked Steve how many he had. And he kind of smiled, which was a little irritating at the time. And he said, I've got 1 rep. And I looked at him funny and was about to MF him a couple times when he said, I have 1 rep 30 more times. And that just reminded me of a concept that I really try to live by, which is to live in the present moment. And to live in the present moment, you do a few things. One, you don't worry about whatever just happened in your life. You start to focus on the next thing that's going to happen. That's called the next play mentality. So I shouldn't have been worried, about how hard the 70 were. All I needed to worry about was just doing 1 more. Like, don't even worry about the 100. Just get up and down this hill 1 more time. And there's very few times in our life that you have just one more of something to do and you can't do it. You know, when you break it down into something that small and you just focus on the next one you have to do, it takes something that looks like an impossible goal and it shrinks it down into something much more manageable. Being in the present moment is also about focusing on the only two things you have control over, which is your own effort and your own attitude. You know, I had allowed my focus to shift on the blisters on my toes and my knees and my back, and look at how many people have already finished and I haven't even finished. And I was focusing on all of the things that I had no control over, instead of just saying, Alan, you know what? You just need to get up and down this hill one more time and do it with the best effort and the best attitude that you can. And then the last part of living in the present moment is learning how to embrace the process. And very similar to what I just said, I took my focus off of the 100. I detached from the outcome and just said, don't even worry about that. Just go up the hill one more time. You can reevaluate it at the end of that rep, but just get up the hill one more time. And if you can say that to yourself 30 successive times, then you'll end up finishing the goal that you initially set out. And thankfully, that's what I did. It took me just over 4 hours to go up and down the hill 100 times. But, you know, I'm glad that I was able to finish. I was one of the last ones to finish for sure. But yeah, Steve's reminder of just live in the present moment, focus on the next rep, was something that was very powerful and much needed at the time. And certainly something that I've emphasized numerous times since.
How have you taken that and applied it to your practical day to day?
Well, the big part of it is a couple. One, next play, the next play mentality. And this was not something that Steve Wojciechowski came up with himself. I believe Coach K, the head coach at Duke, is the originator of that concept. But where it was really taught to me was through Mike Jones, the head basketball coach at DeMatha, who would say to the DeMatha players all of the time, next play. You just turn the ball over. It's okay. Next play. You just missed a wide open shot. Don't worry about it. Next play. I know the referee missed a call. Next play. And he conditioned the players to not worry about the play that just happened, but focus on the next one instead. And I can't tell you how many times every day of my life I say next play to myself, and I just whisper it quietly or just say it internally. But no matter what happens, I have to move to the next play. And that experience with Steve certainly reminded me of that. But I think what was most important was this detachment from outcomes and results and focus more on the process. And even more important than that is learn to love the work, like learn to love the process, you know. And I know this has been overused and I don't know who came up with this, but it's the difference between have to and get to. You know, I didn't have to do 30 more reps. I got to do 30 more reps. Here I am. I have an opportunity to be at one of my heroes' homes, participating in a really unique and exclusive event with some high performers and some amazing people. I get to test my physical and my mental and my emotional toughness. Like, what an amazing opportunity. And I allowed myself to veer off and start to whine and complain and make excuses and focus on all of the wrong things, when instead I should have said, man, how unbelievable is this opportunity? The sun is shining. I'm surrounded by great people. There's some music playing. I get to do 30 more reps, and I'm going to do them with the best effort and attitude that I'm capable of. And we all need these reminders. You know, this is not about living a life of perfection. This is about being much more focused on progress and on the process. So for me now, yes, there are certain things I would love to be able to do in my life and certain achievements and certain goals, no question. But I spend very little time thinking about any of those things. I put most of my time, attention, and focus into the process of what it will take to make those things much more likely, because you can't guarantee outcomes. You can't guarantee any results, no matter what it can be. You know, and this helps in every single area of my life. You know, at present, I'm writing a second book. I'm writing a follow-up to Raise Your Game. And the only part that I have control over is writing the best book that I'm capable of, is putting my heart and soul into a book that I really believe will be very impactful and influential to the readers. But that's it. That's where I stop the control. I do not control how many people buy it. I do not control whether or not it makes a bestseller list. I don't even control if people will like it or find it helpful. That's all on them. That's on their side of the fence. And anytime that I spend worried about things that are outside of my control, is time not invested in things, excuse me, in my control. So I try to keep that focus on there. And I will say, generally speaking, I'm pretty good at doing that now. Yes, every couple of weeks, I'll find myself distracted or find myself worrying about the wrong thing. And this is where two things are incredibly helpful. One, I have the self-awareness and the systems in place where I'm constantly reflecting on my life, where I can catch myself. I can catch myself saying, man, I wish I had more people that listen to my podcast. I just checked last week's numbers and they're not near as good as I think they should be. And then I catch myself and go, Alan, you have no control over that. The only thing you can ask yourself, were those episodes the best you were capable of producing? And if the answer to that is yes, then just let the chips fall where they may. If the answer to that was no, I could have put out better podcasts, then that's where my attention's going to go. My attention's going to go into putting out better content, not sitting around wishing more people were consuming mediocre content. So for me, part of it is the self-awareness and the self-reflection. And the other part of it is insulating myself with an inner circle of people who tell me when I'm distracted, who say, Alan, I think you're worried about the wrong thing right now. Why don't you get back to focusing on the process? And these are people that care about me and want to see me happy, fulfilled, and successful. And because I've given them permission to hold me accountable, I'm very thankful that they do that. So, all of those lessons that I learned from that Hell on the Hill story